This is the Gore TV podcast with your hosts Jill Valentine and Sebastian Castellanos. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at a childhood classic, but with a pretty dark twist. We're talking about Operation, you know the game, where you try to play surgeon on Cavity Sam. Well, GoreTV took that pretty lighthearted idea and, well, they reimagined it as a psychological horror experience. And I gotta say, the results are fascinating and a little creepy, to be honest.
It is amazing, though, how something like so familiar can become so unsettling, just by changing the entire context a little bit. GoreTV doesn't even rely on things like jump scares or gore. They tap into something much more insidious, a kind of fear that gets under your skin and just stays with you.
So, okay, paint a picture for me. How does GoreTV take something as innocent as removing a wonky wishbone and turn it into something from a nightmare?
Okay, so imagine this. You're not in a brightly lit playroom anymore. You're in this dimly lit room hunched over Cavity Sam. But he doesn't look the same as you remember. He's not this goofy, grinning patient. GoreTV portrays him almost like, well, they can compare him to figures you might see in Resident Evil. That blank stare, the just unnatural stillness. It's like he's not a game piece anymore, but something else entirely.
Okay, yeah. I'm already getting chills just thinking about it. And what about those little tweezers? They were always kind of hard to use.
Yeah.
But they take on a whole other meaning here, don't they?
Absolutely. They're not just tools anymore. It's like they become cursed instruments. Each time you pick them up, it's like wielding a surgeon's scalpel. Knowing one wrong move could mean terrifying consequences.
Right.
So think about how easily everyday objects can become scary just by putting them in the right context.
It's true. It's like in horror movies when there's that one object, like a doll or a book or a mirror, and it suddenly becomes scary and menacing.
Yeah.
And speaking of menacing, what is with the lack of music in Operation? It always struck me as a kid.
You know, that eerie silence is actually one of the best parts of the horror. It plays on our natural fear of the unknown. Think about Silent Hill.
Oh, yeah.
That oppressive atmosphere where the lack of sound is almost deafening. It just makes you hyper aware of everything, every little creak and groan.
And just when you think it can't get any worse, that buzzer goes off. I don't know about you, but that sound always made me jump, even in the regular game.
Oh yeah, that buzzer. That's a stroke of genius, really.
Yeah.
It's not just a failure sound. It's like this visceral assault on your senses. GoreTV compares it to jump scares in horror movies, that sudden, sharp intrusion. That just triggers a primal fear response.
Yeah, instead of some monster jumping out at you, it's the sound of your own failure.
Exactly.
That's pretty terrifying when you put it like that.
It is. It plays on that fear of messing up, of not being good enough.
Yeah.
And it also points to another key element of this reimagining, the feeling of being trapped in a repeating nightmare. Because Cavity Sam, he's tough to operate on.
Oh, tell me about it.
No matter how careful you are, you always seem to set off that buzzer.
It's like he's cursed to suffer forever with all those wacky ailments. It's like you're trapped in this loop of trying to heal him and never being able to.
Right, it's like you're stuck.
It's like classic horror movie stuff, being forced to relive the same traumatic event again and again.
You're exactly right. GoreTV actually compares it to Silent Hill, how the characters are always trapped in these nightmarish loops. Their actions never seem to have any lasting impact.
It's true.
You think you're making progress, but you're really just going in circles.
And speaking of going in circles, let's talk about those tweezers again. You called them cursed instruments before. What did you mean by that?
Oh yeah, well, in a lot of horror, ordinary objects can become like vessels for something evil or supernatural even. A cursed object often represents this loss of control, this idea that something else is influencing your actions.
So you're saying, in this version of Operation, it's not just that the tweezers are hard to use. It's like they have a mind of their own.
Yeah.
And are trying to make you fail.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I think it speaks to what GoreTV is trying to do. It's really going for a more psychological kind of horror.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical act of operating, but the mental and emotional effect it has on you.
That's a good point. And then there's Cavity Sam himself. He's not exactly the picture of health in the original game either. But GoreTV seems to be saying there's something else wrong with him.
Right. Like, they describe his ailments as more than just a funny bone mishap. They use the phrase distorted, diseased organs to describe them. It's like something is inherently wrong with him. Something that can't be fixed no matter how good of a surgeon you are.
So it's not even about how good you are at the game. It's about how it's impossible to win in the first place.
That's the point. You're never going to win. Think about the themes of classic horror. Fighting against unstoppable forces, trying to escape an inescapable fate.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
GoreTV is saying that Cavity Sam represents that futility.
No matter what you do.
He's always going to be Cavity Sam.
Wow. I never thought I'd find such deep meaning in a game about a cartoon dude with a breadbasket stuck inside him.
That's what's so great about it. It takes something we all know, something innocent and familiar, and turns it on its head.
You're right.
It makes us confront uncomfortable truths that we usually try to avoid.
It's like they did surgery on Operation itself.
Yeah.
And found the hidden fear inside.
And the really fascinating thing is, this idea of looking at things through a horror lens, it can apply to other parts of our lives too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
Like, imagine something mundane, something you do every day, like commuting to work.
Okay.
Instead of thinking about it as boring, imagine it as a descent into this claustrophobic underworld. You're surrounded by strangers who could be anyone.
Okay, yeah.
The train is like a vessel that's just speeding towards some unknown destination. And each stop, it's like a missed opportunity to escape.
You're kind of freaking me out a little.
But you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
It's about shifting your perspective
Yeah.
and finding the horror in the everyday.
It's like that saying, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy.
I love that quote. It's so true.
Yeah.
GoreTV's version of Operation reminds us that there's always something more to see if we're willing to look.
So the next time I'm struggling to remove a Charlie horse with those tweezers, I'll be sure to keep that in mind. You know, thinking about everything we've talked about. What really gets me is how GoreTV uses that psychological horror to really get under your skin. It's not about being overtly scary. It's this unsettling feeling that something is just wrong.
Yeah, you're right. It's about those primal fears we all have, the ones we try to bury deep down.
All right.
But they always seem to find a way to come back up.
And it's like the things we think we know, the things that should be safe, those are the things that scare us the most. It's like they took Cavity Sam, this symbol of childhood, and turned him into a symbol of death. That blank stare, those aching body parts. It's like this reminder that no matter how hard we try, some things can't be fixed.
You're right. GoreTV's Operation forces us to confront that.
Those truths that we try to ignore, that life can be unfair and unpredictable. And maybe, just maybe, there's a little Cavity Sam in all of us.
What do you mean?
Well, we all have those hidden anxieties, those fears of failing.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Our own little ailments that we try to fix.
Right.
Even though deep down we know we can't.
I see what you mean. That's a really good point.
It's like horror. It holds up a mirror to our own minds.
You said it.
Makes us deal with those uncomfortable truths.
About ourselves and the world.
Exactly. So what are we supposed to do? Just accept that everything is awful and be scared of tweezers?
No, not really. I think it's more about trying to look at things in a new way.
Okay.
Question what we believe.
Right.
And be open to the unknown.
Even if it's scary.
Especially if it's scary.
Because that's where we learn and grow.
You're exactly right.
It's like when you watch a good horror movie. You're scared, but you're also kind of thrilled because it reminds you that you're alive.
Exactly.
You can feel something, even if it's fear.
And maybe facing our fears head on is how we learn to appreciate life even more.
Wow. That's a lot to think about. So, for anyone listening, if you're thinking about digging out your old Operation game, maybe don't.
Or do. And embrace the fear.
Because sometimes the things that scare us the most are the things that teach us the best lessons.
That's a great place to end it.
I think so too.
Nice.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we'll be back next time with another look at the strange and unsettling. Until then, thanks for listening.